This episode of I Am Salt Lake podcast is proudly sponsored by Jeds Barber Shop. With 3 locations, you have no reason to not always look your best. Go get a haircut, a beard trim, or even a straight razor shave. Jeds Barber Shop is open 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday, 9 to 7, and Sunday, 12 to 5. Their newest location is located at 167 East, 900 South, right next to Randy's Records. They also have a location downtown at 212 South, 700 East, and up in Sugar House at 2153 East, 2100 South. No appointment is necessary. Just show up, get yourself a haircut. Maybe you have a last-minute date or a job interview. Jed's Barbershop is the place for you. Head on over to their website at jedsbarbershop.com for more information.
Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
All right, Chrissy, let's welcome everybody out today to episode 306 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris Hollifield.
And I'm Chrissy Hollifield.
Hey, if this is your first time here, feel free to head on over to our website, iamsaltlake.com. This is where you can go and listen to the entire back catalog of episodes. All the ways to subscribe to the podcast are right there on the website.
Yeah, it's really easy. We have it all laid out. And there are so many great episodes. There are so many cool people to go back and learn about.
And I know a lot of you have missed a lot of the episodes because when I reshare an episode on social media, people don't even realize. They're like, oh my gosh, you talked to this person?
Exactly.
We've talked to him. I can guarantee it. Hey, but speaking of subscribing, I've been really excited to talk about this on this week's episode. I know I shared it with a lot of you already, but we are on Spotify.
Right?
I Am Salt Lake is on Spotify, which a lot of people don't realize how hard it's been for podcasts to get on there. A lot of people have been requesting it.
Mm-hmm. They've been so selective about who they're letting on.
But they've opened the gates to a lot of podcasts. And I know people have asked if we get paid to get on Spotify. No, we don't make any money.
That'd be great, though.
I wish we made money. It's a little different. I think bands might make money.
Oh,
if they're
bands
on Spotify.
might. Yeah.
Anyway, we don't make any money. I know it's just easier for people to subscribe because I know a lot of you already have the Spotify app on your phone.
Yeah, man.
Just type in I Am Salt Lake. You can hit follow. You'll get all the episodes right when they get updated. Like if you were on iTunes.
And it's an easy way to share. If you know other people.
Can you share podcast episodes that way on there?
Well, I guess I should find out. But I know you can share music.
Like playlists.
So it seems like you can make a playlist or something and share that. Let's try it.
Yeah,
I'm going to try it.
So
I'll share it with all my family.
So go check it out on the Spotify app. Hey, today on the podcast, really fun interview. We got to sit down and chat with Terry Burden. Terry
He is so entertaining.
He really is. He's the host of Mountain View's show on Park City TV. He's interviewed so many of the movers and shakers here in Salt Lake City. So many of the people that I've had on this show, that
Including
we've had
yourself.
on this show. I've been on there twice. Really honored to be on there. Terry's a great guy.
I was giving him a hard time for not having me on there.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe you haven't been
I'm
on there,
just kidding.
Chrissy.
Well, I'm not that.
Anyway, I know a lot of you don't know his story.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people haven't heard interviews with Terry. So I was really excited to be able to bring him on an episode of I Am Salt Lake, get to find his uncensored story, his story that he hasn't been able to share, what brought him to Park City, what got him the job at Park City TV. Kind of an interesting story there.
It is really interesting.
What got him over there. We're going to get into that here in just a minute, but I want to talk about how we run into events where we need a photographer, somebody to capture the moment. You got to have photographers in this day and age.
You do. I love taking awkward family photos.
Hey, maybe you got a work holiday party coming up. I don't know. It might be a little too late to get her for this work holiday parties, but maybe you're a comedian. You need headshots. Maybe you just need family photos. Maybe you need wedding photos. I want to invite you to check out the photography of local photographer Amanda DeWolf. You can check out her website, amandakmemories.com. Again, that website is amandakmemories.com. All right, let's quit talking here, Chrissy. Let's get into that interview we had with Terry Burden when he came over to our office, shared his story. Afterwards, we got some Patreon people we need to thank. Anyway, but let's get into that conversation with Terry. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy. And we're not controlled by the
except not
FCC
fun.
here, Terry, so you can swear
Oh,
here.
fucking wonderful.
And I think listeners of Park City TV want to hear the uncensored version of Terry.
It's really interesting that you say that, because last evening I had dinner with my new bosses, and the big boss, the owner of Park City, the new owner of Park City Television, was in town, and I didn't know that I was going to get some feedback at dinner.
Okay, let's hear it. We're listening.
And the good news is that my boss, Steve, really kind of gave me the carte blanche. Not that I haven't had that in the past, but the old ownership was fairly passive. And so he basically said, I get what you're doing, but I want the real Terry. Like,
wow.
So he's saying you're not real.
well, yeah, he was kind of saying that. Yeah, he really was.
But he's saying really get comfortable and be yourself.
Well, inject more of myself. He didn't use the word pathos. I think I used the word pathos, but that was the gist of it, was that you're hosty, and that's nice, but that doesn't necessarily always make the best television or the best entertainment. And so he was, like I say, in a way, at first I was a little thrown off because I wasn't really expecting some really candid feedback. But he was very straight up and said, there's more. And this was really I took it in the spirit that it was intended, even though it was a surprise. But he said, I want more. I want the real you. I want more of that.
But you can't swear.
No, that's true. I can't. But I think.
But
that doesn't mean you have to limit your personality. You just have to get more creative with your words.
That's right.
So how do you must get a lot of feedback doing what you do.
Honestly, Chrissy, I don't. I mean, I get, because I work in local television and I do something that's really different than what anybody else does in this market. In some ways I might. Well, I certainly look up to Doug Fabrizio a great deal.
Sure.
He's a really brilliant guy. I've had him on the show once, and I want to have him back, and I'm trying to really curate a great topic. That really will do him justice as the super bright guy that he is. But, mostly people are so grateful for the opportunity to come on, and television is a thing. It's old timey, but it's also,
it's still legit. I mean, in today's world, my kids are obsessed with YouTube, right? And YouTube sensation is
And
all
so
the
am I.
rage. But when I told them that Chris was coming on TV to be on your show, they freaked out. They're like, "Oh, he's so lucky." It's still just
hey,
right?
I'm winning points
Brownie
with the kids.
points.
right.
All of a sudden, I'm the cool guy. I'm not just the guy that's sleeping with their mom.
You
right?
got to be prepared.
You're
for
the
being
cool
the
guy that's sleeping with their
man.
mom.
I mean, when you least expect it, it creeps up on you. Coming from a lifelong card carrying dork. So
I don't know what that feels like. That's sarcasm.
So let's back up a little bit here, Terry. I'm always curious, like where people are from, what brings them to Utah, because you're not from Utah.
I am not. I've been everywhere, man. I was born in the Midwest. I was born in Clinton, Iowa. It's a pretty ag town. It's not a super small town. It's 30,000 people, but really in a lot of ways, Clinton, Iowa's heyday was at the turn of the 20th century. In those days, they would cut timber in Minnesota and Wisconsin and float it down the Mississippi River. And a lot of the lumber mills were in Clinton, Iowa. And so at one time, the halcyon days of Clinton, Iowa was when the Curtis Toy Company was, toys were still made out of wood. And so, after that, as agriculture became more industrialized, it was in some ways a port city, even though it was on a river, not a larger body of water. We have all kinds of agriculture comprised of pigs and cows and corn and soybeans.
So did you grow up in a farming home then?
I did not. My parents did, and I'm the youngest by a long ways. So I have 3 much older siblings, and I was kind of the first grandchild in a way. Same parents, they stayed married, but my closest sibling is 8 years older. And like I say, my parents both grew up on a farm, but my dad served in the military in World War II, believe it or not.
Wow.
And spanning the generations. My dad was almost 50 years old when I was born, which of course was highly unusual. And but I always say that I'm the proud product of Catholic birth control. So I'm here because of that.
Sounds very similar. My mom kind of was in a similar situation. I want to say her oldest sister was 7 years. There was a 7-year gap between her and her next sister.
Next oldest, yeah.
Very similar.
Yeah,
she grew up in Minnesota, so I got family. So
interesting.
And maybe that's a Midwest thing, right? Wait 7-8 years and then have a baby.
They just keep going.
Did you come to Utah then from Iowa, or where did you? I moved around a little bit.
Yeah, I moved around a lot. I went to university, undergraduate in Des Moines, Iowa, at Drake University, home of the Bulldogs, and a degree in finance there. And my dad was a bookkeeper after he got out of the military, and he gradually kind of made his way up, and he ended up managing a credit union at a very large corn processing plant. So he was essentially the people's banker, kind of, the working class, the guys who literally punched a clock. And
is that where you got your interest in finance from?
I wouldn't say that I ever had any interest in finance.
All right.
So if you didn't have an interest, why did you go to school for that then?
Very much so the encouragement of my father. Like I say, this is kind of like your grandpa, and you have, I didn't really have parents that, he my parents. It wasn't like that. And I look back and I feel grateful that there was some intuition that I had that I didn't need to hassle these people. And so I think in a lot of ways that kind of has shaped kind of my
You didn't rebel a lot?
I did not. I mean, I got away with some stuff, but I wasn't really a
angry teen.
No, I was never an angry teen.
That's nice.
I was in love with the guitar, and I spent a lot of time playing guitar and doing theater and stuff like that. But I had an aptitude. I was a good student, and my dad, was always wildly encouraging of scholastics. And so when I got a nice scholarship to go to Drake University, I wanted to please my dad, and I didn't have to please my mom. I was a total mama's boy. So there was total acceptance there. Born on Mother's Day. Because I was a good student, I just figured, and I think part of this kind of goes to the fact that, my older siblings were, they were young adults, but they weren't really in a place in their lives where they could really mentor me a great deal, as I was coming through junior high and high school. And I was very influenced by my dad's work. And I think I also had a sense, and this I think speaks to the time a great deal, I probably bought into the idea of, well, Terrence Michael, you should do something sensible. Mm-hmm. And I kind of had a shorthand of, well, I can play music or whatever other fun pursuits, but I'll have some reasonable job.
A legitimate degree.
Exactly. The backup plan to pay for the fun.
Yeah. So I got my degree at Drake, and then my dad had really gotten interested in this MBA, Master of Business Administration graduate degree. And
interested for you?
Yeah, yes. Yeah, that would be the that would be the
you gotta love it, right? And
yes.
So did you go more?
So
your MBA.
I went to Vanderbilt in Nashville, Tennessee.
Wow.
And I thought about law school, and I can look back now and see that a lot of the misgivings that I would have about my life path later on were even being sown then. And I honestly chose the MBA as opposed to law school because it was a year less.
Sure.
It was.
Do you regret not going to law school now?
I don't, in as much as at that time, and again, because I really didn't have anybody that was saying like, it's not that uncommon now. In fact, I had dinner with a fellow the other night who went to law school at the U here in Salt Lake, and with the intention of getting into politics, and he really never intended on practicing law. And to use, in my case, if I could go back in time and advise young Ter, I would say, look, dude, you know what? This is great. You're good at school. Do the MBA, but do it as an application, not that you're going to go be a financial analyst, which I was for many years at the beginning of my career. But I would say, listen, kid, just go and do it for the reason that you should, which is to learn stuff. Mm-hmm. But use that as an applied thing. Be
as a tool in your belt.
Exactly. Be a savvy business guy who wants to go out and be creative. And, one of my dear friends from childhood always used to say, and he was very much like me in a sense that he was a creative, funny. Tim Bowman passed away a couple of years ago from a brain tumor, sadly, but a very funny guy, was in Minneapolis for years and did stand-up comedy and did tons of shows with Mitch Hedberg. And Tim always used to say, Terry, we came up in the Reagan 80s, and like the idea of, I'm going to take a year off of school and just kind of breathe in and breathe out and screw up and play in a band and go back or whatever. Like nobody was doing that. Of course, there were people that were doing that, but not in Iowa.
Yeah.
And not in Nashville, Tennessee. Everybody was really looking at that MBA kind of as a tradesman's, like a certification kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I accept the path that I took because it got me to where I am now.
Sure, and you can't regret it.
Yeah, absolutely not. It made you who you are.
One thing, there were a lot of years of my life, I regretted a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. But then I'm like, I am where I am. I got where I got. I all these awesome people I met along the way. I wouldn't take it back.
You might not know your lovely wife.
Well, exactly.
And be the luckiest guy in Salt Lake City if you hadn't have made all the, and I say that all the time. And
all the terrible mistakes along the way.
You say that about me all the time.
Well, not just you, but
Chris, he is the luckiest guy of Salt Lake City. You know what I mean? Have you seen his wife? She's smoking hot.
Amazing podcast, lovely wife, burgeoning family. It's all coming together.
So what brought you to Utah then? Did you come right to Park City then?
No.
Because you live in Park City now,
I do
right?
live in Park City. The Cliff Notes version is that when I got out of business school, I went for a very short time to Chicago, and Chicago was not for me. I'd spent time in Chicago.
Beautiful
growing
city,
up.
though.
It's a beautiful city.
It is beautiful.
And again, if things had happened differently, and I have my oldest brother Joe has been in Chicago for 30 years now, very long time. Chicago was not for me. The job that I took there, I had interviewed with an accounting firm in Atlanta when I was finishing up school. And I actually, it so happened that the guy who was a hiring partner at Arthur Anderson and Company, the formerly largest accounting firm in the world that's now been defunct as a result of their involvement with Enron. You may recall Enron or may not, but that was
I've heard that word.
That was a bummer.
That was a debacle géant. It was just a huge... the
cluster,
largest. Yeah, it was a cluster fuck, everybody, and that's the F word. That's F word number one. Sting. Yes, Terry is in. He's broken his duck. I worked for about 3 years in accounting and had a wonderful time in Atlanta. I moved from Chicago to Atlanta pretty quickly, and I basically spent most of my 20s in Atlanta. I played in a really great band there, which was a really important thing to kind of keep me alive.
What kind of music were you playing?
Well, the Sargasso Seas and the other fellows still play together almost 20 years later. And we played kind of blues rock. It was proggy. It was definitely Zappa influenced.
Right, nice,
there was some jam influence. We started up about the same time Widespread Panic did. They were over in Athens. And the kind of the crew that we hung around had connections to the Allman Brothers and, a lot of these Georgia-based groups. When I was a young kid, I played with an adolescent Derek Trucks a couple of times.
Nice.
And, he looked like they just tore him away from the video game console, but he just was the incarnation of Dwayne Allman. And even as a little kid, and I'm talking 12 or 13 years old, back in the old days when you could, bring a kid in the front door, and that was okay in a bar. Mm-hmm. Played a couple of times with a very young Derek Trucks and had a great experience. That was the first time I'd ever been just a front man. I always kind of hid behind a guitar and really was mostly interested in guitar. Singing was for well, when I was growing up in high school, singing was for choir and
the nerds.
Well, no, I did it.
I was one of them. So.
Yes, and I did all those things.
Yeah.
But because of my involvement in theater and choir, guitar was my rock and roll, was my cool outlet. I never wanted to be Robert Plant. I wanted to be Jimmy Page.
Yeah.
And the Sargasso Seas was the first time that I just had to stand up there, and really, in some ways, was the thread of the beginning of where I've come to be as a host. And I had to learn to be that master of ceremonies, and that was a really wonderful experience. I got a really cool consulting gig in San Diego. I got recruited out there, so I moved to Cali in the late 90s and worked between San Diego and LA and back to San Diego again for about a dozen years. And I had ended up I was a partner in a personal training business. I had kind of encountered this really cool workout that was very different than what was happening at that time. And I kind of became my trainer's best student. And I was sort of getting out of the business world. I was done sitting at a desk and all that. So I became a trainer. And again, there was another step. This was a one-on-one training protocol. So I would be in a room like I am with you guys right now in a very quiet setting. And I would coach this strength training workout. And I really learned a lot about being an entertainer, believe it or not, by doing that, by
interacting with the one-on-one with that, whatever person you were currently working with.
And keeping them in a good humor when they were doing something that really none of us like to do, which is work out. I mean, we kind of I manufacture enthusiasm for working out, but
instead of being one of those mean dictator types.
Exactly, Chrissy. I detested that. And I never had a dream to be a trainer. It just kind of happened to me, and I became a partner in this business. But my father was a master of cliches, and I definitely have some of those genetics in me. And so as an example, one of my lines that I would always use with a client and with a kind of, a recalcitrant client or a new client who was trying to kind of get used to it, I would say the work we're doing is very serious. That doesn't mean we have to act serious.
I like that. I think that's a good rule for everything, all the time.
Yeah, indeed. I've never kind of expanded on it like that. Oh. But the thing really was for me that I get it. I understand how hard it is to work out. I mean, the basis of not liking to work out is that, our survival mechanisms are wired into our reptilian brain, the base of the brain, and the survival mechanism historically, you want to talk, even just as shortly as 40 or 50,000 years ago, expending energy. Like if you're expending energy, you better watch it because you don't know exactly your food source and those kinds of things, especially when you go back before agriculture and, and hunter-gatherer societies and settings. Don't waste energy.
Sure.
So.
Yeah.
And that's a product of evolution. So the reason that we don't like to work out and why we love to eat calorie-dense foods is completely physiologically logical. So there's a really good reason and an understandable reason that I could always look at my clients and say, I totally get it. Don't feel bad about it. People go, I hate to work out. There's a good reason for it. Don't feel bad about it.
We're not supposed to work out, but here we are.
Yeah.
We changed the whole way that we live as a people.
Park City then.
Yeah. So the recession hit 2008, 2009, and we had a ton I'm in North County, San Diego, and we've got mortgage brokers and realtors and mortgage bankers and appraisers that are our clients that are paying $300 a month for a personal trainer. And when you're selling tons of houses or you're selling tons of mortgages, life is good. But as soon as the fundamental underpinnings of that market where people were getting mortgages that shouldn't have gotten mortgages, or they were getting much larger mortgages than they should have gotten because everybody was on the gravy train, right? That whole thing cratered very quickly and our business cratered. So I found myself kind of unmoored from really a career path. And, I don't know if it was a crisis, but there was certainly some existential musings that were taking place. I met a gal in San Diego who I'm still friends with today in San Diego that was from here. And we kind of dated back and forth for a while. And finally we just, we realized that either we give this a try or let's, high five and good luck. Mm-hmm. And she had a daughter from her marriage. And so I wasn't, she wanted to come to California. It was completely natural and understandable. And I wasn't quite, we didn't know if the relationship was going to work out. And so I said, things are kind of loosening up in my life here in California. So, I'll go out to Utah for a while and just hang out. And, I still had a sense, I don't think anybody thought that the recession was going to be as protracted as it became. Mm-hmm. But so I kind of just thought that I was going to come and, kind of learn how to snowboard and hang out for a while. And if things didn't work out, I'll just bounce and go back and take up my corporate life again in California. And like I say, I kind of got marooned in Utah, and there was really some of the hardest times of my life were the 2 years that I was here before I met a gal and that relationship had ended. I met a gal that was from Park City, and I started to visit and we got serious. I was spending more time in Park City, and I'd seen PCTV go by, and completely consistent with my entire life of not being competitive at sports, not being competitive for the promotion in my early business career. The first play I ever tried out for in the 9th grade, I went to the stage door the next day and I was livid that I did not get the lead in that play because I saw those other auditions and I crushed all those juniors and seniors. And I always had this intensely competitive sense in the arts, in entertainment. And so I remember thinking, I do that better. And Ori Hoffer, who was my predecessor, fantastic guy, we still keep in touch. He was just a different guy. He was a journalist, very bright dude, and did great work. But, I looked at it and, coming from, growing up as a 70s kid, Johnny Carson. And, so I had this idea of this kind of panache guy. And it just worked out that I saw the morning show host open up. And I knew
the morning show at Park City.
At Park City TV. Yeah. I knew that 7 a.m. was it wasn't Tara's time of
not
day.
Ideal.
Not for me. I did not apply for that job. I was a little chagrined at my own, that I demurred from doing that. But shortly after, I remember sitting on the couch on a June afternoon and my Facebook page, blinked and refreshed. And right there at the top was a link to Craigslist posting to host the Mountain Views program, which was the evening talk show that features live music. And it really, in a lot of ways, it was the seminal moment of my life in that I knew when I saw that ad that I was terrified, to be honest. And I was terrified because I hadn't gotten the job.
Yeah.
In the minute that I saw the listing, I was,
it was love at first
scared
sight.
To death of, yeah, absolutely. I was scared to death of not getting that job. And I worked it. I got the job.
Hold that thought. We need to take a break to play a message here really fast from our sponsor. But when we come back, we're going to jump into the world of Park City TV with Terry.
Righto.
So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. This episode of I Am Salt Lake Podcast is proudly sponsored by Jeds Barber Shop. With 3 locations, you have no reason to not always look your best. Go get a haircut, a beard trim, or even a straight razor shave. Jed's Barbershop is open 7 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Saturday, 9 to 7, and Sunday, 12 to 5. Their newest location is located at 167 East, 900 South, right next to Randy's Records. They also have a location downtown at 212 South, 700 East, and up in Sugar House at 2153 East, 2100 South. No appointment is necessary. Just show up, get yourself a haircut. Maybe you have a last-minute date or a job interview. Jed's Barbershop is the place for you. Head on over to their website at jedsbarbershop.com for more information. what year was this then? Park City TV. I know you've mentioned to me off air a few times how long you've been there.
Yes.
But when was this that you started?
This was 2011. Yeah, I think it was June or July-ish that maybe it was later than that. I'm not big on record
it doesn't matter. Just a rough idea. You've been doing it roughly about 6 years.
Yeah. I started about mid-October, and I used to kind of know exactly the date that I did my first show. Call it the 15th of October. Again, it's not important to me either, but I do know that since October of 2011, I've been doing 4 shows a week, and, I've taken a few week vacations here and there. I've never missed a show. Never called in sick, which again is a miracle to me because I would get bored with jobs easily, and I want to move on. And like I say, as an adult, I've been a little bit more rebellious and rambunctious. So I managed to ease myself out of a few jobs.
Sure, I know. I can relate with that.
I think we've all at least wanted to. So good on you.
So for people that haven't seen you on TV, Monday through Thursday, 6 o'clock, right? Is that 6 p.m.?
We essentially tape our show at the same time as everybody else in the talk show business does, with the exception that we go live. Kimmel and all those guys, they tape, but then they've got some period of time to, tighten up the show and edit it and that kind of thing. And we're live at 6, but then we also broadcast again at 11 p.m. And I think it might even run at some point in the middle of the night kind of thing, as is often the case with community television stations kind of thing. But for all intents and purposes, we are live at 6 and it's live. There's no 7-second delay.
What would happen if you would swear? What would like if I was a guest, I was recently on.
Yes.
I mean, what would happen if I would have said, fuck?
Well, my understanding is, and I haven't gone to the source material, but my understanding is that, and the first thing to know is that Park City Television is an FCC licensed LPTV low power television station. And what that means is it falls under the auspices of FCC broadcast regulations. And like Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or Conan O'Brien, the 7 George Carlin words, my understanding is it's $100,000 per word. Per violation.
So who would pay that, me or you?
Well, I put it this way: the fine would be levied against Park City Television, and I can speak with, as one of my old bosses used to love to say when he didn't really know the answer, but he would say, I can say with intellectual certainty. I can say with intellectual certainty that if you drop the F-bombs, that Park City Television would be liable for the fines, but they would probably look you up and make sure that you had a chance to atone for your sins in a civil court. Right?
Sure. I mean, I was just curious of that, right? Like, especially now that you say there's no delay.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, some of us have mouths that we don't even
can't
know.
really control.
Sometimes all of a sudden, today I was picking up one of her kids from school, and I about swore like a sailor out another car, and I was like, "Whoa, there's kids in the car." I mean, sometimes you forget to censor yourself around other people.
What's the hardest thing about going live? I mean, have you had any real tricks that you've had to learn?
Honestly, Chrissy, I'm made for this. I'm sure there are tricks that maybe by now are intuitive, but
no learning curve, huh?
I certainly needed to learn in terms of comfort and kind of how to craft a conversation. You guys know all about that. You've done a lot of this. It's a different milieu, but it's really the same thing. And I was just always so wild for it from day one. And I, because of my prior history, my work record, I was a little concerned about 4 days a week that, maybe I'll get burned out on this. 4 is a lot. And I booked the show. So, there's a lot of work on that side to make sure that you got, a butt in the seat when you go live.
How do you make sure? I mean, you book every show yourself, the band, everybody that comes. Do you have like a big calendar?
I do. At the beginning, it was really hard because I didn't know people here. I wasn't connected to Utah or Salt Lake or anything, but shout outs to City Weekly and Slug Mag because they taught me. That's how I learned.
How did they teach you?
I just pick up a City Weekly and a Slug Mag and sit down.
See who was in it?
That's what I did for this show.
Yeah,
because
right?
I didn't know a lot of people. I was a little bit connected because of my ex-wife and all of that, but I didn't know a lot of people. And I got turned down a lot in the beginning, especially. I still get turned down to this day, but a lot of people don't want to be behind the microphone. And I'm sure you run into that too.
I do. In some ways, I've been at it for so long, and I kind of think of our numbers as similar in as much as, our format is different and that kind of thing. But, a ballpark is about 1,200 shows. So, if you were to say, what were the first 600 shows like? I'd say, I have no recollection. So, in that sense, I don't really remember how hard it was. I do remember being stressed about that and always kind of worrying that, the guests that I was bringing on were sort of good enough or,
oh, sure. If they're going to be vibrant or bring energy to the show. I know how it is. Sometimes, it's like pulling
you don't know what
teeth
it's
to
going
get
to be
them
like.
to talk.
Right.
Be like, please just talk. Say something.
Say more than yes and no.
A fascinating human isn't necessarily a fascinating communicator.
Sure.
And some people, this is my kind of my love affair with comics, although not all comics are created equal in that sitting down with a comedian may or may not be a great conversation. And especially because, we're not in LA and everybody hasn't sort of, created their own kind of shtick.
Their own identity.
Yeah.
Well, and there are comedians who call comedy a parade of autism. So there's definitely a spectrum of personalities that you're going to deal with no matter what. Even if you hope you can count on people for good conversation.
And I've been fortunate in having this period of time that I've been doing it that, I don't mean to play favorites, but I'm just, picking some people out that I really love. Steve Solberg is so great. He's just, of course these are all very funny people when they're standing naked on a stage with only a microphone for protection. And in the case of sitting on the couch, Steve is genius in a completely different way. Andy Gold is so fantastic. Spence Roper, hilarious guy. Spence always comes with show and tell objects from the murder shed. If you know Spence
the murder
Roper.
shed. Yep.
Hilarious guy. I love Abby Harrison a lot. She's not doing quite as much comedy anymore, so I haven't really seen her in a little while. But and there's also people that aren't compelling television when you're just sitting kind of spitballing with them.
Those guys are fantastic, though. Everyone you mentioned.
And I think they've all been on the show. No, so I haven't had Spence Roper.
Yeah, we need Spence. I know where he lives. We'll go kidnap him.
We need Spence. We need
You
Spence.
do. I love that guy. I have.
He is so much fun.
I have woodworked magnets on my refrigerator in my home that are from the hand of Spence Roper. So
Maybe if we invite him on the show, he can build us a table.
Do you get very many no-shows on your show? That would be what I would be afraid of. That's why I like to have a few interviews in the bank, right? What if something, something happens to Chris?
Do you have like a friend you can call up really quickly if nobody comes?
Yeah, man. I've wondered that even myself. What if I got sick the day I was supposed to come on your show? What would you do?
It certainly happens.
You just deal
over
with
time.
shows?
Yeah, over time, I'm just a lot more circumspect about
Just
it.
spread out the other person, the other guest. Just
Well,
say, hey, we're
that's-
going to talk a little bit longer. The band can play a few more songs.
That's part of it. Also, now we have this gigantic archive of material of interviews that I've done over the years, including tons of really cool Sundance interviews that on some level are always relevant. And sometimes I will go back. One of the cool things about working during Sundance is that, these films that are being screened, nobody knows about. And me included. I have to, we book very shortly before the festival. One, because they don't announce who's even in the festival until just a month or 5 weeks out. And then all those films have to hire a publicist. So then there's another week or 10 days before it's really time that I can start working the phones like a Wall Street trader to get 125 or 30 interviews booked for an 11-day period. But, one of the things that will happen is that, a film that nobody's ever heard of that hits and is just a Napoleon Dynamite. That's the great local example, really the best example, regardless of its local origin. But those breakout films, and sometimes quintessence happens where I've been able to get an interview with some filmmakers, producers, writers, etc. that at the time, the publicists are like, we really like this film and we really want you to do an interview with the filmmaker. We love this film. That's why we're repping it. And there's nobody in the film, right? I mean, there was nobody in Napoleon Dynamite. That's kind of the perfect example. I think John Grease was kind of the only guy. Uncle Rico was like the only guy in that film who really had any, and maybe even the only guy that had a SAG card. So there were no stars in that film, but it wasn't about the stars. And that's the beauty of the Sundance Film Festival. So then 6 or 9 or even a year later, depending on how a film gets released, all of a sudden now everybody's starting to know about this film that was completely unknown. And we did an interview during the festival. And now all of a sudden you go back into the archive and grab that interview and bring it into the present moment. And you go, wow, you're
ahead of the curve.
It is with no knowledge whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to be able to say that, we curate the roster of interviews that we do during Sundance, but like I say, it's such a real time thing to get booked. And we do 3 hours in the morning and we do another hour in the evening. So, and I pre-tape interviews, more to your point of banking interviews. I'll do interviews during the day that we just tape that aren't airing at that time. But I've had, some really cool, really fun conversations with people that I never expected to.
Like who?
This is a very industry kind of thing, but Cameron Bailey he's the executive director of the Toronto Film Festival, Toronto. And TIFF is a really big deal. I mean, TIFF is right there with Sundance in terms of its importance to the kind of the global film marketplace. And one of my publicist friends just said, hey, Cameron from Toronto is in town. Would you like to interview him? And for example, I have interviewed John Cooper, who's the executive director of Sundance, but trying to get a little bit of his time is a really cheeky thing to ask when he's directing his film festival.
Yeah.
So here's Cameron Bailey, he's not a famous guy. I guess a better example would be Laird Hamilton, the legendary surfer. And last year, Rory Kennedy, the daughter of RFK, of the one-time Attorney General who was assassinated in 1968, and his daughter has made 33 or 34 documentary films. I mean, she is yeah, she's a lion of the documentary world, and really all she has to do is make a film, and she's in Sundance. Mm-hmm. But she made a film about Laird Hamilton called Take Every Wave. And, I lived in California for a long time and surfed. And, if you've had any nexus to that culture at all, I mean, there kind of isn't a Hollywood star who sort of has the same standing in their respective world the way that Laird Hamilton is in surfing. I mean, he's just, he spans generations. He's an amazing guy. And I got to sit down with Rory Kennedy and Laird Hamilton. And I mean, that's as good as it gets. I think also that's a good example of the nature of that beast, which is that, we're not getting Ashton Kutcher because he might be in a film or he might have produced a film, but, he's flying into Hebrew on his private jet and coming up and doing, 6 hours and walking the red carpet in the premiere. And then after the premiere, he might, have a cocktail and have a meeting or two. But then he's going back to Hebrew and getting on his jet, and he's going to go to bed that same night back in LA. So those kinds of sort of retail names, they can be hard. And of course I always try, but.
What about, you mentioned Ashton. Mm-hmm. What about Hyde, who was in that 70s show too. He has a bar up there in Park City.
He does. He's a partner in the Downstairs. And
have you had him on Park City TV?
I never have. I've tried. That's the other
Is he
thing
kinda
about
low key up
again
there?
these retail, and I use that term not in any derogatory sense, but kind of stars. They're so put upon.
Yeah.
So heavily.
They can't really walk anywhere or do anything and just be.
I would think though if he
left
put
alone.
himself out there though and owned a bar. And like he DJs there, I think even some nights, right? If I'm not mistaken,
He does, yeah. He's
and
around.
I've heard I got buddies that do Uber, and they've taken him around in an Uber.
Yeah, sure.
And it's like, gosh, you should come on Terry's show if he's listening. I know Hyde is a listener of I Am Salt Lake podcast. Pretty sure he is.
Fantastic.
I'm sure.
Terry, what's your email? No, just kidding.
Exactly.
No,
Terry Burton TV on Twitter. Get at me.
That's right. You're big into Twitter now. You're kind of a big deal.
Bigger.
Kind of a big. Are you enjoying it?
I'm leaning in. I would say that. I think I'm starting to kind of get what Twitter is or
Twitter
what it means.
It's a mess if you let it be a mess because the timeline.
Yeah.
It's going a million miles an hour if you're following a lot of people. Mm-hmm. But if you create little lists, right? Like these are all the Utah people. These are all the news people. These are all the famous people.
Twitter lists is actually how I met Rich.
Rich Wilson.
Rich Wilson. Yeah.
Another great comedian.
Very good comedian.
I don't know Rich.
He has an Australian accent.
Yeah, sorta. A sort of Australian accent.
Anyway, sorry, Rich. Rich is a listener of the podcast.
Rich, if you're listening, please join me on Park City Television.
You won't regret it.
Fantastic.
But anyway, what were we saying? Oh, Twitter.
I think in 2017, and especially in kind of the current political climate, I think that, again, to use this word curation, I think on Facebook even, we're starting to see how important it is to weed out what doesn't work for you. I mean, hey, if what you want to do is, talk about libtards all day and be alt-right, then you want all of that, that version of so-called communications. I'm showing my politics a little bit, but in all seriousness, if that's what you want, then you can get all rage all the time.
Yeah.
And in my case, I see how, I think none of us really meant to get to where we arrived at on Facebook, but because things have gotten a little more tense in the world and people are more kind of combative, we're all seeing, and of course I see it all the time, people will post and say, unfriending or blocking or unfollowing because I have a stomach ache from going on Facebook.
I've had that happen with this pod. I'm not coming on your podcast because of this. No, I'm kidding. Terry's looking at me. What is going? No, but I understand.
But that's Twitter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Twitter's been that since day one. And in fact, I've been thinking that one of the things that will help me sort of participate more effectively on the Twitter platform is to go back and kind of go through my list of the people that I follow and cut out some of the people or organizations or whatever that may have been on there for, on my feed for years. And because it's just now that I'm really leaning in, and I'm also learning how to have a conversation on Twitter. And that's a really great use of the platform that I really didn't get until recently, because I thought, kind of along the lines of, you sort of follow famous people and then you try to get in conversations with 100,000 million other people that are trying to talk to The Rock or something like that.
But why? What made you want to start? Because this is a newer thing for you with Twitter.
I think mainly because, honestly, partially because of my age. I know that we as a species tend to stop learning and stop changing the older we get. And I'm in a young man's game. I mean, being in the media, if I could, I would be 34 right now instead of 4,000. But
But
I hear you.
to keep up with,
and that's why with me with Snapchat, I wanted, it's like, okay, I'm going to master Snapchat. I'm going to figure it out. Hang out with 13-year-old girls.
Hey.
No, that sounded wrong. But you know what I mean, though? Like, that is the demographic typically is younger people, but
the younger crowd. That's how they get their news.
No,
like
it is.
middle schoolers and high schoolers, they get their news from Snapchat.
Absolutely.
From other people's stories.
And I mean, if you find the right people on Snapchat, same thing with Twitter, same thing with Facebook, you can actually follow good people. And I know a lot of people heckle me because of Snapchat, but I actually enjoy it. I have a good time.
And I heckle you, but I
it.
secretly sneak up behind you and you're on Snapchat because I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting.
You never look at any of my snaps.
I always ask you who you're talking. No, I look at. I'm curious about whose snaps you're following because you follow very interesting people. And I look at your snaps because you're very interesting.
You don't look at.
Terry,
I could see
how's it going over there?
I could see who's looking at my snaps. We'll talk when we're done recording.
That was just the really. I think maybe that's why I came here tonight, was just to see you guys together. Because can you feel the love?
Witnessing marital spats.
It
was full of goodness.
Let's talk Park City for a little bit. Why I got you here, Terry? Because I mean, I've brought in people on from Utah County. Mm-hmm. I've brought in people on from Ogden, but I don't know if I've really had Park City people. And I mean, maybe I have, I guess, maybe somewhere along the line. But I've never, I mean, what's hip, what's cool? Like if somebody's listening and they wanted they had an evening or a weekend, what would you tell them to do or check out? I mean, that's a big statement. I guess it depends what they're into.
Even if they were in the off season, if they visit Park City in the off season, what cool stuff is there to do?
No skiing, no snowboarding.
Yeah. And the summertime is absolutely fantastic. They use a phrase in Park City, which is event fatigue. And
that sounds real. Some
local residents, have vocally railed against the amount of stuff that's going on even in the summertime. And I think part of that is down to the fact that there is a traditional rhythm about Park City that's going away because we were more popular than we were even 6 years ago when I moved there. And so, the Kimball Arts Fest and the Savor the Summit and all these really big events that are fantastic. They're all great. This silly Sunday market, I mean, definitely add that to your list and people do. I mean,
a Bloody Mary bar is at the Park City Market.
That's real.
It's good. A Bloody Mary. It's like a make your own Bloody Mary.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's great stuff.
Yeah.
Put on by my buddy Grayson West, Top Shelf Spirits. They do the bar there, and Casey Metzger and Grayson West are pals of mine, and they do a great job, and they do super high end events at really nice locations. But they kill the Bloody Mary bar too, and great people. Go to Park City Sunday Market, do Main Street, come up and decide what. Kind of where you're at in your mood for food, whether you want to do some fine dining. Of course, there's a lot of that in Park City, but there's lots of other cool places to eat. It's definitely, I don't think I'm saying anything out of school that Park City is pretty resorty. So, the greasy spoon is underrepresented in Park City. There's not a great, there isn't really a late night place to go after you've been pounding the shots and beers all night. I definitely have to give a shout out to the Cabin, John Oswald, who is the proprietor there. Junior Richard is a great pal. A lot of people know Junior from his kind of music career. A ton of great people there.
That's a great place to go and see some live shows too.
Yes.
Which place is that?
The Cabin in Park City.
Never been there. I haven't spent a lot of time in Park City.
It's a great place.
I need to go there more for the weekend.
Yeah,
maybe once the baby gets a little bigger, we'll go up there more.
Go hiking with her around the streets because I don't hike in actual hiking time trails. But yeah, is there like a restaurant that you would really encourage people to try?
I guess.
Yeah, I was just referring to the category of greasy spoon. There's not really, there isn't.
For some reason, I thought
there's no great hangover diners.
Yeah,
there.
Exactly. I don't know. 501 on Main, which is right across from the post office, is a great, casual dining. The kitchen is great. Those guys do a great job there. A lot of really good comfort food things on the menu. If you go over into the Prospector neighborhood, which is just out of Main Street neighborhood, El Chibasco is great. I wouldn't quite call it cheap Mexican, but it's not expensive by a long shot. And you always know a good joint because it's packed.
Sure.
And Chubb's, as we call it, is a great Mexican place. They got a ridiculous salsa bar, a bunch of different kinds of salsas and stuff. You know, I've lived there for a long time. So to be honest, I spend a lot of time in Salt Lake and a lot of, because of my connection to music with doing live music on the TV show, you know, most of my really, you know, the people that are really dear to me are down here in Salt Lake. So I spend a lot of time in Salt Lake, a little bit less just lately, but.
Are you playing music at all?
I'm working on it. I've got a buddy that has been playing bass with me for a little while, and Paulie is fantastic, amazing musician, and he's stuck by me and trying to get a drummer that will really stick the way that Paul has. And so I'm kind of still, I've kind of been I've been circling over the airport for a while waiting to land, and it hasn't happened yet, but I've had some frustration with it, but I really just been back to playing a lot in about the last 2 or 3 years. So I really had to, you know, kind of get my chops up again. And now I've kind of come all the way to the other side of, okay, this is going to happen when it's going to happen. And so, you know, I play guitar every day. And I mean, I'll go home after this wonderful podcast tonight and rock it out and, you know, get some jams in. But I'm a rock guy. So
you do it for the love of the music.
It's so nice, Chrissy. I don't have to play a gig, and I don't even have to play a gig for $10. I just want to do some cool stuff and have fun. And I've certainly had wonderful support from all my amazing musician homies, which, you know, Salt Lake is just chock full in all the different genres. And I've been fortunate because of my job to get to touch a lot of genres and communities of music. And, you know, hip hop is a great example. It's not a big hip hop community here, but
it's pretty big though.
It's solid.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for a place like Utah.
Yeah,
don't say it's not big, Terry.
No, I mean, the hip hop community has been great to Salt Lake though, too.
This is Terry Burden, and I retract my earlier statements regarding the hip hop community in Salt Lake City.
It really is. I mean, the music scene out here is amazing.
It's so good. There's guys like Jordan Young and Tony Holiday who are spending more and more time out on the road. Jordan just got back from Europe on his second tour over there, and these are amazingly talented guys that get making a career out of music. Michelle Moonshine, amazing songwriter, a good buddy of mine who is she's just always ready. She's always gigging. She's got amazing songs, and the list goes on and on.
Sure.
I cite those particular people because I spend more time with them, not because they're better than anybody else. But my buddy Burnell Washburn is amazing. Beat maker and rapper in the hip hop community, and a very good friend of mine. And, you know, Burnell has been very supportive of the kids coming up. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, I'm seeing, it's really cool. It's like I've been around long enough that I'm seeing new artists. My buddy Zach Ivy's really cool. He's got such a great style, and, you know, there's tons of passion out there. And I think part of it is down to some of the cultural traditions from Mormonism, from the LDS Church. I mean, you know, right? You go down to Utah County, go to Velour, and it's a madhouse. And there's so much talent.
There really is. I know it's interesting. I mean, a lot of us kind of will feel negatively about our LDS upbringing sometimes, but a lot of the people here, it really does focus on music and talent and teaching yourself to do stuff like that. And it really does benefit a lot of the people here.
2 questions I have to ask you before I forget. I just remembered we had 2 questions from people in our I Am Salt Lake Facebook community, the Facebook group, which everybody should be part of. Brandon Isbell asked how he maintains his amazing physique. How do you do it, Terry?
Well, I love Brandon. He's a great friend and a very funny guy, and we have that sort of friendship where we give each other a good-natured hard time. I would not characterize my physique as amazing by a long shot. Probably I might compare somewhat favorably to other men in my age demographic, but mostly just don't eat too much and stay active on a regular basis. I think there was a time when I was working as a trainer and in that business in San Diego when, that was the center of my lifestyle. And of course, it's part of your marketing. You can't be a schlubby looking trainer and expect to do a lot of business. But I think as I've gotten older, I do like to work out. I think I'm a frustrated jock. I was never really athletic in high school, or at least I wasn't really involved in.
Sports ball wasn't your thing.
I would love to have played football because of the camaraderie. I think that's one of the things that I wished for, was that esprit de corps. My older brothers were great golf champions, and so I was kind of inculcated into that path and lifestyle at a very young age. I won my first state championship at age 8 in the 10 and unders. So they had high hopes for me, and my brothers are very focused guys and worked very hard at a very hard game of golf. But, when I was a kid, it was not cool, but that was what the fam was doing. So I wanted to play basketball and football and hang out with the cool guys. And I think I have a little bit of jockism, and I don't mean that in a negative way toward whatever a jock is perceived to be, but I love the gear. I love snowboarding. I've been a real fan of road cycling. The skinny tire stuff is always Tour de France. It's colorful and it's a spectacle. And so I got into cycling that way. And I just like to move around. It's definitely from my dad for sure.
Hillary Gardner asks, we kind of talked about this a little bit, but she wants to know his favorite activity in Park City. So I don't know. I know you mentioned a bunch of different things that you like to do, but what is your all-time favorite activity in Park City?
Fantastic question, Hillary Gardner. Thank you for asking. Gosh, that's hard.
Are you a skier?
I'm a snowboarder.
Okay.
And I'm fortunate as a member of the media that I've had great opportunity. I'd never been on a snowboard before I came to Utah. So my first year at Park City Television, when I was having to shoot packages and coverages out on the hill, was
quite funny.
It was an overwhelmingly, it was definitely funny. It was an overwhelmingly humbling experience, but, I've been fortunate to be on the hill a lot. And that is right. That's why the world comes to Park City and not just Park City, but, Snowbird's amazing. All the resorts here are so great. I'm a huge fan of Powder Mountain out in Eden.
Are you pretty good now, or do you fall it down a lot?
I think.
Do some sweet jumps?
I'm not. I sprained my ankle a year ago, last spring down in Tahoe. That changed a lot. I was kind of thinking like, well, I've always been pretty good on the uptake of different sports, and I love to learn. Surfing is my great passion, and I hope that the third act of my life includes daily dips in the Pacific or somewhere. But I sprained my ankle, and I was fortunate it wasn't too bad, but about a month or so after that happened, and I didn't break it, so I'm just kind of hobbling around with a wrap on and icing and all that, and it hit me that if I had fallen on my hand and broken my either wrist, that I wouldn't be able to play guitar for 6 or 9 months, and that was a chilling thought.
Yeah.
Because music has become, again. I've played guitar since I was 12 or 13 years old. And it's just, in some ways, it's still the most important thing in my life. And I'm, at this.
That would be heartbreaking.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
If you accidentally took the wrong spill.
Yeah. And like I say, I felt like, these are the kind of the things as a grown up that you learn a little more quickly and appreciate more deeply. And I'm definitely that, because I've got a lot to say in music, and I want to get out there. I'm a born performer, so I still got some work to get out there and be able to have a really tight crew, but I'm working on it, and so that experience definitely changed my intentions with respect to snowboarding, and it's probably a good thing. I don't think I'm. When you're a late adopter, you're never going to be as good as somebody who started when they were a kid, even if they've been casual all along. So, that snowboarding, I don't know what else I would point to as a classic or my favorite Park City thing.
The little chair lifts that you can take up the mountain.
Sure.
Can I make a suggestion? I don't know if you've done this, but take the lifts up the mountain, not in the wintertime, and go explore the old silver mine up there. That is so much fun.
I've never
it's
done
an old
that.
abandoned silver mine.
Can we do that once
yes.
after snow time? Uh-huh.
It's really cool.
It's neat.
I don't know if you guys follow, but I'm a big fan of Urbex, which is a contraction for urban exploration. And basically it's this movement of people that love to, in many cases, break into or sneak into abandoned places and
Yeah, that's what it is.
I'll have to check that out. It sounds right
Super
up my
cool.
alley.
I've
Yeah.
had a fascination since I was a kid with broken down things and places. And you're absolutely right, Chrissy. The silver mines are.
It's fun to like create a story. Really, you can kind of walk around and imagine what it was like and what people were doing there and what their lives were like. It's a really interesting thing.
Let's run down the list here really quick, Terry.
Okay.
I'm going to let you get going here. Yapping a little long, you get three interview people going, and we
Right.
can get going.
You just want to talk forever.
How can people find you online? How can people watch you?
Thank you for asking.
How can people spy on you?
Mr. Holyfield, the real deal. Park City Television is on Comcast local cable on channel 102. We stream the Mountain Views program live at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time on our website, which is www.parkcity.tv. It's .tv. It's still kind of an unusual address, but it's the most descriptive.
Works.
Yes. We stream the show on Facebook Live now every day, Monday through Thursdays. The show replays again at 11 p.m. I've had people say you need to get like a fan page on Facebook and that kind of thing. I'm just still Terry Burden, and I'm not an acquirer, so I still have lots of friends available left in my 5,000 limit. And Instagram and Twitter is Terry Burden TV. Chris, I'm going to be taking away your joie de vivre for Snapchat tonight, and I'm going to. I think Terry Burden TV is my handle on Snapchat, but I really haven't. I kind of mingled in a little bit early on, and then I really haven't dedicated much. And I think part of that Twitter conversation is that I need to be better at all social media platforms. And again, I think it's an age thing. I think I just not used to pointing that.
Too.
It is.
Well, you can't. One thing I've done, I've tried to be on everything, and I really need to start scaling it back because
You need to figure out what you specialize at, where you really fit in.
I don't have time to be on all of them. One thing I do like about Snapchat is it's quick little videos, quick little pictures. Like this is behind the scenes going on in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's one thing I like about Snapchat.
Nice.
And I can send naked pictures to Chrissy.
There you go.
I love this podcast.
Anything else you want to say, Terry? I'm going to let you go. I know you got to drive back to Park City tonight.
Well, I want to
hopefully
say
you haven't drank too much here.
Yeah, the potent combination of Coke Zero
Coke and water.
Arrowhead water is.
That's rough on you.
I'm going to be covering an eye on the way home. Just kidding.
No, I'm just glad to finally have you on the podcast.
Thank you guys so much. This is a ton of fun, and I'm grateful to be here, and I just think you guys are doing this thing in a way that honors the awesomeness of the concept of podcast. And you've got a great focus, the focus on Salt Lake and showing the beauty and diversity of this really incredible place. My life has changed so much for the better because of being in Utah. I can't quite encapsulate it in words, but it's super fun to be here, and I'm really flattered that you guys included me, and we love what we do. You guys, I feel kinship to you guys because we like to connect with people and put it out there, and so it's been a ton of fun to be here, and I sure appreciate you guys.
It's been a blast. I'm so glad you came on.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Peace and love.
All right. Many thanks again to Terry Burden for joining us on this episode. For all the links to get in touch with him, to check out Park City TV, we're going to make it really easy. Just head on over to iamsaltlake.com/306. That's where you can find the episode to listen to if you want to listen to it online, as well as all the links right there connect with Terry, become his friend on Facebook, reach out to him, say, hey, you know what? I heard you on the recent episode of I Am Salt Lake. I always find it fascinating when I hear from people on the show and they say, hey, so-and-so reached out to me and heard that interview.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Hey, it's the first of the month. You know what that means. It is time to give some love to our Patreon supporters. You've heard me talk about them. These are the people that love the show. They support the show. Even as simple as $1 a month.
Makes a huge difference for us.
It goes a long way. I mean, if each person donated $1, that's 25 cents an episode. Mm-hmm. It helps pay our lights. It keeps the lights on here. And when we need a new microphone, when we might need to get some more bottled water for our guests or something like that.
Exactly. We have lots of things that help, that add up, that you guys are helping with.
Absolutely. And if you want to find out more about that, go to patreon.com/IamSaltLake and you can see some really cool things. Anyway, we got a whole slew of people here I want to give thanks to. John Miller, Ryan Prince. These are our top supporters. Love both those guys. Well, I love all of them. But Riley Padilla, I know she's a very new Patreon
Hi,
supporter.
Riley.
Hi, Riley. Thank you. And hopefully I'm pronouncing these names right. So apologize if not. Zach Shutt. He's actually been a guest on the podcast way back in the day.
Yeah, before my time.
Brandon Hill over at Mountain Standard Time Marketing. Thank you, Brandon. Will Dugdale. He's been a supporter for a little while. Jared Aguilar. He's been a supporter as well for a while. Brittany Hemingway, Jeff Hadfield, Michael Beck, Eric Tomorrow, Nicole Davison. Thank you, all those guys. And Max Allen, Jeff Hatt, Kevin Lindstrom, John and Nikki from New Zealand. We're going to be talking about their calendar here in just a minute. Three Irons SLC. Man, they've been doing some really cool things here in Salt Lake City.
They really have. They're
making us look bad. And then can't forget Alex Santee, Alan Martindale, Sana, Zell Lee, Dirt in Your Skirt podcast, which you're actually going to be on an episode coming up. In a few months. Christopher Heiser. He's a pretty new Patreon supporter. And Jay Chambers. Thank you so much, guys. I mean, that is a whole slew of Patreon supporters.
It's so cool.
It's like we you know what's really cool about them, Chrissy? These people are saying, hey, you know what? We love your podcast. You got to keep this thing going.
Just that feedback and it helps us so much and makes it worth it,
Well, a lot of people don't realize that, doing a podcast takes money.
Yeah.
And the last thing we want to do is come across that we're begging for money. But it's nice when our supporters jump in and say, hey, you know what? Here's $1, here's $2, here's $5.
That's great. Just throw the change from your car and spare change at us.
Quit drinking Mountain Dew for a month, right? Hey, let's talk about Nikki's calendar. We got the Kiwi calendar here. We got one more month to talk about this. I think somebody else needs to hook us up with the calendar.
We need a new calendar.
So December, it looks like some ice cream and a candy. Maybe you guys celebrate Christmas over there.
Looks like a Christmas candy and a strawberry.
Do they celebrate Christmas in New Zealand?
I would assume that the human race consists of Christians everywhere.
And I realized I never posted picture of last month on there. So I'll post pictures of both months.
Right on.
Apologies, Nikki.
This actually just looks like a really happy Christmas time. It looks like warm.
Yeah.
And I want ice cream now.
Yeah, because I think it's warmer over there right now.
I think it is, yeah.
So they're going to eat ice cream around Christmas.
Because there's flowers and strawberries. That's definitely not a quote-unquote winter. Is it winter? Do they call it winter over there right now, even though it's warm?
I think so.
Do we have the same, quote-unquote seasons at the same time?
It's a good question.
Man, we should know that by now.
Haven't you heard that in an episode of Stuff You Should Know, Chrissy?
Not yet. I'm going to have to. Do you know what I found out the other day, though?
What?
There are no snakes in New Zealand.
What?
And it's illegal to bring snakes there because they don't want snakes there. Now, if this is wrong, Nikki, please call me out. But someone at work told me that, and I was like, how have I never known this?
There's zero. So if you have
Hawaii
a snake
and
phobia,
New Zealand.
There you go, Chrissy. That sounds like the perfect place for you to live.
I knew I wanted to move to New Zealand a long time ago, and that just kind of seals the deal.
You've heard me talk about Jed's Barbershop. I've talked a lot about Jed's Barbershop. I want to mention them right now again, though, and give them a shout out and thank you to them for being a sponsor of the podcast. They have 3 locations, which is really great. 3 locations in Salt Lake City here. So you have no reason to say, I can't get a haircut, but with 3 locations, you know you can. They got haircuts, they got beard trims, they even have straight razor shaves, and they're open 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
With no appointment needed.
Saturday, 9 to 7, no appointment needed. And Sunday, 12 to 5, no appointment needed. So they got 3 locations, like I said, 167 East, 900 South. It's right next door to Randy's Records. Also right downtown, 212 South, 700 East, which is Sprouts is in the parking lot there. And then they also have an appointment. They also have a location in Sugar House at 2153 East, 2100 South. Like I said, no appointments necessary. And jedsbarbershop.com is their address or website address if you did not able to write down an address.
Yeah, jedsbarbershop.com.
Go to the jedsbarbershop.com and find out more about that. And when you go in and get a haircut, say, I heard about you on I Am Salt Lake podcast.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point in talking about it if you guys aren't giving them a little bit of love. Hey, but that's going to do it for this episode of the podcast. I've had a great conversation here with Terry. Thank you so much, Terry, again, for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Me too.
Chrissy. Thank you guys. Thank you, our Patreon supporters. Make sure you go and give our Facebook page a like. This is really cool. We're almost to 3,000 Facebook likes, Chrissy.
It's so great. And there's a lot of cool information about things going on in Salt Lake on that page too.
If you go to iamsaltlake.com/Facebook, it will forward you right to our Facebook page. Really easy to remember. You all have a great week. Take a walk around your neighborhood this week. Remember to support local this holiday season.
And good night, Grammy.